March 13th, 2007, 2:33 in the morning. The Las Vegas Strip goes quiet for the first time anyone can remember. 4 grandsons of Bill Boyd step forward and press a steel plunger into the earth. Fireworks erupt across the facade of the Stardust Resort and Casino, spelling out a countdown in light. 4, 3, 2, 1. 428 pounds of explosives detonate inside a 32-story tower, the tallest building ever brought down on the Strip. The structure folds inward, one floor swallowing the next, and 500,000 tons of concrete and steel collapse into a roar that shakes the windows of every casino on the boulevard. A dust cloud rises and does not clear for 20 minutes. Sheila Navarro, a school supplies buyer from Oxnard, California, has been gambling at the Stardust for 30 years. She watches from behind a barricade with her mother, her sisters, and her brother-in-law. She says it hurts. She says they cried, "Gone!" The 216-foot neon sign with its planets and satellites visible from 3 miles away. Gone. The 16,500 square foot casino floor. Gone. The sports book that changed American gambling. Gone. The counting room where millions of dollars vanished into the hands of men who would end up dead or in prison. The Stardust opened in 1958 as the largest hotel on Earth. It generated billions. It pioneered the modern sportsbook. It inspired one of Martin Scorsese's greatest films. And for a critical decade, it was controlled by the Chicago outfit, the Kansas City mob, and a handful of men who believed they were untouchable. This is the story of how they were wrong, but first you need to meet the man who dreamed the whole thing up and died before the lights ever came on. Antonio Cornero Stralla was born in 1899 in a village in northern Italy. His father lost the family farm in a card game. Then a fire took the harvest. The family left for America with nothing, and his father died soon after. From the beginning, Tony Cornero understood 2 things about the world. Luck is a currency, and the house always needs an edge. By his 20s, he was one of the most prolific rum runners in Southern California, smuggling liquor up from Mexico during Prohibition. He got caught. He went to prison. He got out in 1931, the same year Nevada legalized gambling, and his brothers opened one of Las Vegas's first 7 licensed casinos, the Meadows, a place with real tablecloths in a band stage 10 years before anyone had heard of the Flamingo. Lucky Luciano, through Meyer Lansky, demanded a percentage. Cornero refused. The Meadows burned. So Tony pivoted. He bought 2 ships and anchored them beyond the 3-mile limit off Santa Monica. The SS Rex held 2,000 gamblers, a crew of 350, a French chef, and a full orchestra. He made $200,000 a month and earned the nickname the Admiral. It took the future Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Earl Warren, then California's Attorney General, to shut him down. In 1954, Cornero bought 36 acres on the North Strip for $650,000. He planned 1,000 rooms. The largest hotel the world had ever seen. He called it the Stardust. The Nevada Gaming Commission denied his license. The SEC investigated his stock sales. Creditors circled. None of it stopped him. He spent $3 million of his own money and got the building 80% finished. He just needed $800,000 more. On July 31st, 1955, he walked into the Desert Inn to play craps. He lost $37,000. He got into an argument with a dealer over a $25 chip. And then Tony Cornero, the Admiral, the bootlegger, the man who outran Lucky Luciano and stared down Earl Warren, dropped dead of a heart attack before he hit the floor. He was 56 years old. 500 people came to his funeral. The Stardust sat unfinished in the desert sun. For 3 years after Cornero died, the Stardust was a skeleton. His brother Louis tried to finish it and failed. Creditors filed petitions. Stockholders sued. The Sheraton hotel chain looked at buying it and walked away. Then, in January 1958, a woman named Rella Factor wrote a check. Her husband was John Jake the Barber Factor, a man with deep ties to the Chicago outfit. The Factors finished what Cornero could not, and on July 2, 1958, the Stardust opened its doors. It was everything Cornero had promised. 1,065 rooms spread across 6 motel-style buildings, the largest casino in Nevada, the largest swimming pool in Nevada, a 140-foot bar running the length of the east wall, rooms at $6 a night, and the show, the Lido de Paris, Las Vegas's first topless French revue, staged by the legendary Don Arden on a platform that rose and fell on 6 hydraulic lifts. Opening night drew governors, senators, and half of Hollywood. Out front, the sign, built by the Young Electric Sign Company, 216 feet of cosmic fantasy, planets, stars, a satellite orbiting Earth, all lit by 11,000 bulbs and 7,100 feet of neon tubing. It was the largest freestanding sign in the world, and for a generation of Americans driving into Las Vegas for the first time, it was the first thing they saw. But walk past the showgirls and the neon, and the picture darkens. By 1961, the Stardust's credit manager had 7 known aliases and 14 criminal convictions. The casino manager was a veteran associate of Al Capone. The general manager had done time for tax evasion. Tony Cornero built a cathedral. The men who opened it turned it into a machine. And in 1974, the machine attracted exactly the kind of attention it was designed for. For its first 16 years, the Stardust did something no casino on the Strip had attempted. It ignored the high rollers. While the Sands courted Frank Sinatra and the Desert Inn chased whales, the Stardust chased volume. $6 rooms, dollar buffets, lost leader drinks. Come for the Lido de Paris, stay for the craps table, bring your wife, bring your kids, bring your whole bowling league from Toledo. It worked. The Stardust was the leader in room count on the Strip from 1958 until 1969. The Lido de Paris ran every single night for 33 years. The Stardust International Raceway, built in Spring Valley to promote the casino, drew Mario Andretti and Jackie Stewart. Howard Hughes tried to buy the place in 1966 for $30.5 million. The government blocked the deal on antitrust grounds. Hughes already owned too much of Las Vegas. Think about that. The richest man in America wanted this casino, and the federal government said no. By the early 1970s, the Stardust was cycling through corporate owners. Delbert Coleman's Recreon Corporation held the title, but the fundamentals had not changed. Cheap rooms, a big casino floor, steady traffic. The Stardust was a gold mine running on autopilot. And in the world of organized crime, a gold mine on autopilot is an invitation. What happened next would take a decade to fully unravel. It began with the most ordinary transaction in the American economy, a loan. Alan Glick was 32 years old, a Vietnam War veteran, Bronze Star, 3 combat air medals, a real estate lawyer from San Diego with a clean record and a firm handshake. The FBI would later give him a nickname, Genius. They meant it sarcastically. In 1974, Frank Balistrieri, boss of the Milwaukee crime family, used his influence with the Teamsters Union to secure Glick a loan of $62.75 million from the Teamsters Pension Fund. With that money, Glick's company, Argent Corporation, took control of the Stardust, the Fremont, the Hacienda, and eventually the Marina. Only Howard Hughes owned more Nevada casinos. In October, on Balistrieri's orders, Glick hired Frank Lefty Rosenthal as his executive consultant at $250,000 a year. Rosenthal was a Chicago odds maker, a convicted sports fixer, a man who had never held a gaming license and never would. He sat Glick down and explained how things were going to work. Rosenthal told him that if he interfered with any of the casino operations, he would never leave the corporation alive. The skimming began in November. This is how it worked. Every casino has a counting room where cash from the floor is tallied for tax purposes. Rosenthal hired a man named Jay Vandermark to supervise the Stardust slot machines. Vandermark rigged the coin-weighing scales to undercount. The difference, hundreds of thousands of dollars, was pulled from the counting room before the IRS ever knew it existed. Couriers carried the cash to Kansas City, where it was divided among crime families in Chicago, Milwaukee, Kansas City, and Cleveland. Cleveland's share alone was $40,000 a month. The Nevada Gaming Control Board later estimated $7 million was skimmed between 1974 and 1976. Some estimates run as high as $15 million. But Rosenthal was not just stealing, he was also a genius. He installed the first in-casino sportsbook in Las Vegas history, with luxury seating, big screens, and a dedicated space that turned sports betting from a back alley habit into a mainstream attraction. He introduced female blackjack dealers and doubled the table revenue. He brought Siegfried and Roy to the Stardust before anyone knew their names. He also could not stop drawing attention to himself. He hosted a weekly television show, broadcast live from the Stardust showroom, with guests like Frank Sinatra. The Kansas City mob was recorded on FBI wiretaps calling him crazy. In November 1975, a San Diego investor named Tamara Rand, a woman who had loaned Glick $500,000 and wanted her share of Argent, was found in her kitchen with 5 bullets in her head from a silencer-equipped .22 caliber gun. Professional hit, no forced entry, nothing stolen. The murder was ordered to protect the skim. This was the cost of doing business. And the man enforcing that cost had just arrived from Chicago. Anthony Spilatro came to Las Vegas in 1971, sent by Tony Accardo and the Chicago outfit to watch over their interests. He was Rosenthal's childhood friend from the old neighborhood. On paper, his job was simple: keep everyone in line, make sure the money flows. In practice, Spilatro couldn't help himself. He launched a parallel criminal empire, extortion, loan sharking, and fencing stolen goods. He formed the Hole in the Wall Gang, a burglary crew that netted over $1 million in 1980 and 1981 alone. The FBI connected him to as many as 25 murders. In one case, he put a man's head in a vise and tightened it until the man's eye burst from the socket. He was entered into the Nevada Black Book. He was banned from every casino, and he was having an affair with Lefty Rosenthal's wife. Jerry McGee Rosenthal was a former topless dancer with a growing dependence on alcohol and drugs. The affair with Spilatro shattered whatever remained of her marriage to Rosenthal. They divorced in 1981. None of this was quiet. None of this was discreet. The Chicago outfit had sent Spilatro to protect a secret pipeline of cash, and instead he had turned Las Vegas into his personal crime scene. In 1978, the FBI launched Operation Straw Man. They placed wiretaps in Kansas City, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Las Vegas. They bugged the back room of a strip club in Chicago where outfit bosses openly discussed their hidden casino ownership. That same year, Carl DeLuna of Kansas City sat Glick down in Oscar Goodman's law office and made a promise: sell Argent immediately, or we will murder your sons, one by one. Glick announced the sale. Frank Colata, Spilatro's own lieutenant, was captured during a botched burglary in 1981 and flipped. He entered the witness protection program and started talking. The walls were closing in from every direction. Then, on an October evening in 1982, someone decided that Lefty Rosenthal had become more trouble than he was worth. On October 4th, 1982, Frank Rosenthal walked out of Tony Roma's restaurant on East Sahara Avenue carrying takeout. He climbed into his 1981 Cadillac Eldorado and turned the key. Flames rose from the defroster vent, small at first, 2 or 3 inches reflected on the windshield. Then the explosion. High explosives wired to the gas tank ripped through the rear of the car. But Rosenthal's Cadillac had a steel floor plate, a factory-installed feature to correct a weight imbalance, and it deflected the blast away from the driver's seat. The bomb shredded the gas tank instead. Rosenthal's clothes caught fire. He forced the door open, fell to the asphalt, and rolled. The car erupted behind him. 2 Secret Service agents in the parking lot, advance team for a presidential fundraiser, were cut by flying glass. A woman named Myram Borders heard the explosion and ran out. Rosenthal was screaming, "They're trying to kill me!" She asked who. He said nothing. No one was ever charged. The suspects read like a roll call of everyone Rosenthal had managed to enrage Spilotro, who was sleeping with his wife, Balistrieri of Milwaukee, who was recorded on a wiretap saying he wanted full satisfaction, and Kansas City, who thought Rosenthal was a government informant. Here is the thing Kansas City got right. Rosenthal was an informant. 3 former law enforcement sources confirmed it after his death. He had been talking to the FBI, possibly before the bombing. When the Bureau offered him witness protection afterward, he declined. "It's just not my style," he said. 5 weeks after the bombing, Jerry McGee was found dead in a Los Angeles motel. She was 46. The official cause was an accidental overdose of Valium, cocaine, and alcohol. The circumstances were never fully explained. Rosenthal left Las Vegas for good, moving to California first, then Florida, where he spent his remaining years offering sports betting advice on a personal website. He died of a heart attack in 2008 at 79. He never saw the inside of a courtroom, but the evidence that would put his former bosses there was already sitting in a filing cabinet in Kansas City, written in a dead man's handwriting. Carl Tuffy DeLuna was the number 3 man in the Kansas City mob. He was a suspected killer. He was an experienced criminal, and he kept notes, handwritten, coded, meticulous. The names of every mobster receiving skim money rendered in number pairs. Joseph Ayupa, boss of the Chicago outfit, recorded as 11. His underboss, John Cerrone, recorded as 22. Dollar amounts, dates. A complete paper trail of the largest organized crime conspiracy in the history of American gambling, written down by one of the conspirators and seized by the FBI in a 1978 raid on DeLuna's home. The tapes were even worse. Federal agents had bugged the back room of the Admiral Theater, a strip club in Chicago. On those recordings, outfit bosses discussed their hidden ownership of the Stardust in plain language. On one tape, Joseph Lombardo can be heard counting skim money in the office of Alan Dorfman, the Teamsters' corrupt pension fund advisor. The indictments came in 1985, 15 defendants, the top echelon of organized crime across 4 American cities: Ayupa, Cerrone, Lombardo, Angelo LaPietra of Chicago, Milton Rockman of Cleveland, Frank Balistrieri and his 2 sons from Milwaukee, Carl Savella and DeLuna from Kansas City, Anthony Spilotro, severed for separate trial. Alan Glick took the stand as a cooperating witness, immunized from prosecution. He described DeLuna's death threat. Angelo Leonardo, former Cleveland mob boss, testified about the skim's inner workings. Former Teamsters president Roy Williams admitted he had taken $1,500 a month from Nick Savella for 7 years, his cut for voting to approve the pension fund loan that started everything. On January 22, 1986, the jury returned guilty verdicts. Ayupa, Cerrone, Lombardo, LaPietra, Rockman were convicted of conspiring to hide their ownership of the Stardust and skim $2 million. Others pled guilty before and during the trial. Maximum sentences reached 40 years. After the convictions, Chicago severed all ties with Kansas City. Ayupa blamed DeLuna's notes for the entire case, a mob undone by its own bookkeeper. But there was still one piece of unfinished business, and it involved 2 brothers who had just been summoned to a meeting they would not survive. In January 1986, with Ayupa and Cerrone heading to prison, the remaining leaders of the Chicago outfit gathered at the Czech Lodge in North Riverside, Illinois. The consensus was unanimous. Tony Spilotro had drawn too much heat. 5 of his own people had become government witnesses. His recklessness had put the bosses behind bars. He had to go. June 14, 1986. Tony Spilotro and his younger brother Michael left Michael's townhouse in Oak Park, Illinois, around 2 in the afternoon. They were in Michael's 1986 Lincoln Continental. They had been told this was a good day. Michael was finally going to be made, inducted as a full member of the outfit, a promotion, an honor. They drove to a hotel parking lot in Bensonville where senior outfit member James Marcello picked them up. Standard protocol: before a making ceremony, you get driven to a secret location. Marcello brought them to a house on Bryn Mawr Avenue. In the basement, the outfit's leadership was waiting, not for an initiation. When Tony realized what was happening, he made one request: "Can I say a prayer?" There was no answer. The brothers were beaten to death. Fists and feet, not baseball bats, despite what the movie would later show. Their lungs filled with blood. They suffocated. Their bodies were stripped to their undershorts, driven 60 miles southeast, and buried 5 feet deep in a cornfield near Enos, Indiana. 8 days later, a farmer named Michael Kins was spreading chemicals on his field. He noticed freshly turned earth where no corn was growing. He figured a poacher had buried a deer. He called the Department of Fish and Wildlife. A biologist named Dick Hudson drove out that evening and started digging. 3 feet down, his shovel hit something. Hudson said he thought to himself, "This is a person." Dental records confirmed it. Anthony Spilotro was 48. Michael Spilotro was 41. They had been dead since the day they left Oak Park. It would take 19 years for anyone to be arrested. In 2007, James Marcello was convicted and sentenced to life. Tony Spilotro was suspected of committing 25 murders. In the end, the organization he had served his entire life killed him the same way he had killed others, with the promise of something good, in a room with no way out. While the mob drama played out in parking lots and cornfields, the Stardust itself was dying a quieter death. After Glick sold Argent, operations passed to Al Sachs and Herb Taubman, both former Stardust general managers, both supposedly safe choices. The skimming continued anyway. Federal authorities accused them of funneling money to the Chicago mob, and in December 1983, the Nevada Gaming Commission did something it had never done before. Using emergency powers created specifically for this moment, the commission suspended the Stardust's gaming license. An 18-count complaint. Sachs and Taubman were finished. But the real scandal was what came out afterward. Richard Bunker, the former chairman of the Gaming Control Board, had suppressed an investigative report during Sachs's licensing process. The report documented the entire 1970s skim and concluded that Sachs himself had hired both Rosenthal and Vandermark. Bunker claimed the evidence was inconclusive. The state of Nevada had handed the Stardust to a man its own investigators had flagged, and then buried the file. The regulators needed someone clean. They found the Boyd family. Sam and Bill Boyd had been running the California Hotel and Casino downtown since 1975. They had never been connected to organized crime. They had never had a licensing problem. They were, by every available measure, exactly what the Stardust needed. In 1985, Boyd Gaming took over. An ex-FBI agent named William Romer, who had spent years tracking the Chicago outfit, put it simply: the amount of skim had been so heavy that the profit and loss statement did not present a true picture of the gold mine that the Stardust was. A gold mine. That's what the mob had been sitting on, and they burned it down for $40,000 a month to Cleveland. The Boyds did what the Boyds do. They cleaned house. They built a 32-story tower in 1990, the Stardust's first high-rise. They retired the Lido de Paris after 33 consecutive years and brought in Siegfried and Roy. Wayne Newton took up residence. George Carlin played the showroom. The sports book Rosenthal had built became the most famous in America, featured in magazines and on the nightly news. For 2 decades, the Stardust was legitimate, profitable, and beloved. But Las Vegas was becoming something else. The Mirage opened in 1989. The Bellagio in 1998, the Venetian in 1999, Wynn Las Vegas in 2005. The new strip ran on $300 rooms, celebrity chefs, and bottle service nightclubs. The Stardust, with its bargain rates, its retirees from Manitoba, its sportsbook regulars who had been coming since the Carter administration, belonged to a Las Vegas that was no longer in existence. In 1995, Martin Scorsese released Casino. Robert De Niro as Sam Rothstein, Joe Pesci as Nicky Santoro, Sharon Stone as Ginger. The Stardust became the Tangiers, and the real story entered American mythology. Rosenthal, watching from Florida, said De Niro's portrayal was a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. He declined to rate Sharon Stone's version of Jerry. On January 3, 2006, Boyd Gaming announced the Stardust would close. In its place, Echelon, a $4.4 billion mega resort, November 1st, 2006, the last day of operations. A longtime patron from Manitoba asked Bill Boyd to sign a souvenir from the sportsbook. The dealers played their last hands. The slots went dark. The neon sign, all 7,100 feet of tubing, all 11,000 bulbs, went out for the final time. 4 months later, the grandsons pushed the plunger. You already know what happened next. Boyd Gaming broke ground on Echelon Place in June 2007. 14 months later, the Great Recession hit and construction stopped after $1.5 billion in spending. The site sat empty for 5 years, an 87-acre dirt lot on the most expensive stretch of real estate in the Western Hemisphere. In 2013, Boyd sold the land to Malaysia's Genting Group for $350 million. Genting announced Resorts World Las Vegas. The original plans included a replica of the Great Wall of China and a panda enclosure. Neither was built. What opened in June 2021 was a $4.3 billion glass tower with 3,500 rooms and a 117,000 square foot casino. Inside the lobby, there is a sculpture of the Stardust's iconic sign, a tribute or a headstone. Tony Cornero died at a craps table in 1955. He was 56. Alan Glick cooperated with the government and lived out his days in La Jolla, California. He died of cancer in 2021 at age 79. Frank Rosenthal was never charged with anything. He died in Miami Beach in 2008 of a heart attack at age 79. Jerry McGee died in a motel in 1982. She was 46. Nick Savella died in 1983, shortly after his release from prison. Joseph Ayupa died in 1997, still a convicted felon at age 89. Tony Spilotro was beaten to death in a basement in Bensonville, Illinois. He was 48. Oscar Goodman, the lawyer who represented Rosenthal, Glick, and Spilotro, was never charged with a crime. He became the mayor of Las Vegas in 1999 and served until 2011. His wife succeeded him. The Stardust sign lives at the Neon Museum on Las Vegas Boulevard North. The stars still glow. The satellite still orbits its painted Earth. If you stand in front of it at night, you can almost hear the hydraulic lifts raising the stage for the Lido, almost smell the felt on the tables, almost feel the particular electricity of a place where a bootlegger's impossible dream came true and then was hollowed out by the same forces that built it. Every casino on the modern strip exists in the Stardust shadow. The sportsbooks descend from Rosenthal's invention. The mass market pricing descends from Cornero's vision. The corporate ownership structure descends from the regulatory reckoning that followed the skim. Las Vegas learned everything it knows about spectacle, profit, and self-destruction from one casino on 60 acres of desert. They just don't have to bury anyone in a cornfield to keep the lights on anymore.